What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Casual Shenanigans Tech, a podcast all about helping you with your PC build or PC problems. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremiah, and I am joined by Dave.
What's up, guys?
And tonight we're going to start the podcast. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit tired right now. I was about to say today. And
I can actually hear like the gears not just turning, but grinding a bit.
We're start as we always do with the rig report.
As the rig report.
Rig report. Dun, 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 dun. So I am getting ready to update to Windows 10, and then as soon as I do the upgrade, I'll do a clean install, just so I'm ready to go for Forza Horizon 3 later this fall, and to go ahead and just make the jump. But that's really all I've got in the cards. I haven't really changed anything else. What about you?
I have a 1080, which is pretty exciting. What was not exciting was the 5 weeks it took to order it. Yeah, that's my first time, I think, sitting on an actual launch date and saying, I want to be cutting edge, I'm ready to hand over my money, and then watching just no stock available. I wanted a EVGA originally, had a pre-order from Amazon. After 4.5 weeks, I canceled the pre-order, and then 4 canceled orders from Newegg because of stock issues where, like, I would check out, it's in the cart, it says you're good to go, I check out, and so the confirmation email about 2 minutes later, I had to get we're sorry, we can't complete your order because it sold out while you were entering the 3 digits of your credit card required to finish the checkout. I was logged into everything. I was ready. I had the stock checkers, but the demand for these cards has been nuts, and people have accused NVIDIA of being, a little bit stingy or unprepared, but they've said that they've sold more cards at this launch than any other previous launch, and they're still not in stock today, like the night of this recording, weeks after I got mine.
Yeah, I mean, they've got pretty crazy demand for them, which, I mean, good for them. It's kind of hard to tell, like, do they really have that much demand, or do they always just suck at rolling out the products? It's kind of hard to tell.
I think they've always sucked at rolling out the products. I know that I actually remember when the 980 came out, which I did not buy at launch. I still remember people talking about, paper launch, they weren't ready. But it wasn't, what is it now, 7 weeks after the official launch of the 1080? And just for fun, I'm still watching the stock trackers to see the angst and the anger and the despair. And Newegg has raised the prices, I think now $120 over MSRP, and they're still selling.
I don't understand people wanting to be on the cutting edge that bad. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's a cool card, but as somebody who games with 4K, like, I tried it with The Witcher, and yes, it's faster. But, like, when you're gaming at that level of graphics performance, we're talking the difference between 32 and 40 FPS. Like, how many hundreds of dollars is that honestly worth,
Well, for me, at 1440p, is the difference between, like, 55 to 60 FPS and, like, 60 locked in Witcher, which, like, again, how many hundreds of dollars is that really worth? Like, people's rabid fanaticism trying to get a hold of these, like, yeah, that's nice, but, like, if you really cared about that much, you could drop a couple settings and be at it, no problem. Like, I tried. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Okay, but again, that's kind of your problem.
It's me and Geralt's problem. It's our problem.
Right, exactly. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I don't get the rabid fanaticism around it. It's not like people's old cards stopped working, You were still able to game with the best cards on the market are still available. 980 Ti's are consistently hitting $380 to $400 right now.
Nuts.
That is an awesome buy for that price. Like, if I was recommending a build right now, I wouldn't be recommending a 1070 or a 1080 unless somebody has a specific use case. Like, yeah, the 1070 is great if it was selling at MSRP, but guess what? It's selling for almost, $500 most of the time?
It won't be at MSRP for, I think, a few months.
Get a 980 Ti. I game at 4K. I have not needed 6 gigs of VRAM yet. I've hit 5 a few times, but, like, I don't think we're hitting that anytime soon where you're going to have it. So,
and here's where I am with the upgrade. I paid, I think, between 35 and 40 over MSRP. I got an Asus Strix, but what ended up happening was that ended up to almost exactly be what my Amazon pre-order was going to be because of tax. Because I don't pay tax for Newegg. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I can deal with that. Honestly, as awesome as the locked VSync is in Witcher, which is what I really, really bought the card for, is I would do anything to have the perfect Witcher experience. The main advantages that I've enjoyed is it is noticeably cooler and quieter than the TI, because the TI was kind of like the flagship, look what we can do this generation, end of the generation awesomeness. Even overclocked, this 1080 is, I'd say, less than half the noise of my TI. And I think my TI is noisier than yours was. I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, did you give me back the right TI?
Oh, yeah, because mine always stayed in the prime slot.
Because I've never felt like mine was loud. And part of that is I have a quiet case on purpose because I don't like hearing it. But it's never bothered me. And when I had your 970 in here, your EVGA, I definitely heard it.
Yeah.
And when I had the 970 SLI, I definitely heard that. And when I had my R9 290, I definitely heard that. So this 980 Ti is the quietest one I've had in a very long time. So nice. I find it odd that yours is so much louder, but also you're using it in a non-insulated case that's head level, not head level, but it's
desk level, yeah.
Desk level, and it's like 3 or 4 feet away. Mine's closer to me, but it's down near the carpet. I've got actually sound foam around it, and it's an insulated case. So I just don't even think about it.
All that said, though, I think it really was more leaning towards the card for fault for the TI for noise and not the case, because like I said, it's a huge difference in the 1080 for noise and heat. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Overall, I'm quite happy with it.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Our first question comes from Wayyne. He wrote into casualshenanigans@gmail.com, and he says, my friend is on an extremely low budget for his gaming PC. He mainly wants to play TF2, Skyrim, and CSGO, and possibly some other older games. Could you guys possibly create a parts list that's $400, including a keyboard, mouse, and monitor? I have a copy of Windows he could use, and he does not mind buying used parts as long as they're in good condition. So really, we're talking about like a $300 gaming computer. Whew. So when I first saw $400, I was like, sweet, I'm building another potato masher. I say, with monitor, that's kind of rough, because you can find cheap $60 monitors, but it's like a 17-inch 1366 by 768 monitor. I can't do that to your friend, Wayyne. I can't. I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? That's just,
your friendship's just too valuable to us.
So I put together a parts list that wasn't bad. I actually had a G3258 in it. This is one of the use cases where I would say hey, G3258, good to go.
Yeah.
Because he wants to play older games. And a G3258 is awesome at playing older games. And if you overclock it, it would be awesome at a lot of newer games. Not all of them, but TF2, Skyrim, and CSGO, you're fine. But including a monitor, it was riding the limit on a lot of stuff. So what I am suggesting is there's a desktop computer on Newegg, an HP Pro 3500. It's like a B stock or off lease computer. It has an i3 3240, 3.4 gigahertz hyper-threaded dual core, 4 gigs of DDR3, a 250 gig hard drive, Windows 7 Home Premium 64-bit, mouse and keyboard, $160.
Wow, that's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
It's quite impressive, actually.
4 gigs of RAM is fine for all those games. Okay. 250 gig hard drive is fine for all those games, and can easily be upgraded in the future, which is also what I'm thinking about. The power supply is not going to support a bigger graphics card, but the motherboard will, because it probably comes with, it doesn't list it here in the specs, but from looking it up, it probably has a GT 520 or some garbage card.
Sure.
So the other link I've got for you, Wayyne, is the link to the EVGA B stock page. You should go here, spend $30 to $40 on a graphics on a not a graphics card, on a power supply.
Whoa.
No, on a power supply.
Yeah.
The stock varies. Either that or go to PC Part Picker and get an EVGA cheap power supply. Their cheap ones are okay. You're buying on a budget here. It'll be fine. It won't be amazing, but it'll be fine. Buy that, stick that in that desktop. Easier than building your own. And then I've got a link on eBay to a GTX 760 for $90 plus $15 shipping. The The problem with buying cheap graphics cards is they are very hard to find. When they get under $100, the market gets all weird. So if you can find them on Craigslist, you can get great deals. But like on eBay and Amazon, they just hit $100 and stagnate. And no manufacturer, like if NVIDIA sold a GTX 760, they repackaged it today, however much it cost them to make, $5 or something. And if they sold it for $60 or $70 brand new, it would clean up, but there's not really that much of a market for it. So you kind of do have to buy them used, and it kind of sucks.
And, Jeremiah, I've always wondered if that weird price floor is because of the secondary market wanting to do stuff like SLI or like replace one that broke and stuff like that, where it's like very specific people looking for that card. They have to have that card. And so they just kind of fight over it.
There's got to be a reason, because there's got to be a reason that you can pay that much for this card now, and it's worth that. Like, this costs the same as a GTX 660 and a GTX, 660 Ti, and they're all like the same price, and like some of them are way newer. It doesn't make any sense. So it's got to be something like that. But either way, so that's all that stuff. There's no monitor in there. Your friend said he's okay buying used stuff. I would say get all that, see how he's doing budget wise, and then just look on Craigslist. LED monitors are not that special. In this price range, he's not going to be getting an IPS. He's not going to be getting 144 hertz. He's not going to get any of that. You're spending less than $100, and this is still within his budget, but he'll be spending less than $100 on a monitor. So go on Craigslist in your area, or whatever your used stuff, online marketplaces in your area. Because at least in my area and any area I've lived, there's a ton of like 5 to 6 year old 19-inch monitors, 1600 by 900 monitors, stuff like that. Like, not incredible stuff, but stuff your friend can definitely use.
Yeah, and if you do a bit of searching, actually, I was looking on Craigslist for some furniture a few days ago and came across the most random post. It was one of those horrific computer task chairs, like the super crappy ones. And then it was a 16:9 ratio, but a small, probably 19-inch monitor. It was like $10 for both. They were moving. We're selling a desk too, and
that's another thing. I've done this before. When I moved into the camper, we had to sell, we sold 2 desktops and 4 monitors or something, like when we were paring down. And it got to a point where I had 2 22-inch 1680 by 1050 LCDs. I sold for $20 a pop.
Yeah,
like total good working condition. Just nobody cares about them. They're not that special. People want 1080p. They want whatever. So if you go on Craigslist, you can probably spend less than $50 and get a fine monitor, and possibly a graphics card. I've just sent you links to everything but a monitor, because monitors are a little expensive to ship. So it's up to you to find that. But thanks for writing in, Wayyne. As always, write in if you need more clarification or if you want to follow up for any reason. All right, EU writes in and says, "Hey guys, I don't like that England's leaving me." No, EU. I think his name's Eustace. He wrote in and said, "Hey guys, first off, I want to let you know how much I enjoyed the podcast. Thanks. I stumbled upon the Potato Masher Doom video and started checking out all of your content, and it's really good. Thank you again."
Can we just all take credit for all your content, Jeremiah? Just as a group, we just ride that wave.
Anyway, I had a question. I was thinking about moving from my GTX 960 up to a 1070 or an RX 480 until I realized my really old FX 4130, and so Dave, that is a quad core. It's an AMD quad core, about a $90 part. It might cause a bottleneck, so I thought about upgrading my CPU to the FX 8350. Do you think that's a good enough CPU to pair with either GPU? If not, I was considering just doing a completely new Intel build. Lastly, what card of the two I mentioned would you recommend? $200 is hard to pass up for that RX 480, but I've been an NVIDIA user since I started PC gaming 5 years ago, so it's all I know. I also heard AMD isn't that great on driver support. I can speak to AMD driver support. Dave, what do you think about NVIDIA driver support?
It's gotten a lot better.
I mean, I don't think it's very good. I feel like I've
Says
been a
the
lot
man who
happier.
hasn't updated drivers in a year.
Well, actually, I did about a month ago.
Okay.
I feel like I was a lot happier once I stopped updating, because all the new games still ran fine, and I wasn't messing with it all the time. I feel like when people complain about, like, oh, if you're a PC gamer, you have to constantly update your drivers, they're NVIDIA users, and they're doing what NVIDIA tells them. Because every other week, they have a new 300 megabyte driver they say you need to install, and it's like a 10-minute installation, and it flickers your screen the whole time, and, like, it's a pain in the butt.
And I just do it every 2 months now, on average, about 2 months.
Okay. in my opinion, AMD's driver support's better because they bother you less. If you're running Crossfire or SLI, you need that like minute-to-minute driver support. If you're running a single card, it honestly does not matter that much.
Unless,
like,
as long as you install a new game that has like specific performance issues and you check the driver release list and it says, we fixed these things in this game, use this driver.
Right, but I don't think it's the type of thing like it does not need to control your life. And if you're an NVIDIA user, I would not be upgrading every week and a half because stuff breaks constantly. Stuff breaks when they do that. And so I'd be upgrading every few months minimum.
Of course, with NVIDIA too, you have the pretty useful GeForce Experience software where if you don't know how to set your graphics settings, it can help with that. Or if you're like me and use the Shadowplay DVR a lot, that's useful. Yeah, and that is really nice. And AMD does have their own. Honestly, I've not used it in a little while, so I can't tell you how well it works. I know they do have a solution. And Shadowplay is pretty good most of the time. So, but part of it is that you do get, if you are using the GeForce Experience suite along with your NVIDIA driver, that's a second thing to nag at you for updates every couple of weeks. So just keep in mind.
Here's the thing with Eustace's build. He has an FX 4130, and he's thinking about an FX 8350. Now, it's AMD. It's nice. You can just drop it in, same socket. All that's cool. Here's the thing. That will only matter in games that can use more than the 4 threads your 4130 has. Because clock for clock, those chips are about the same. Like if they're running at the same speed. For 1, 2, 3, and 4 threaded applications, there's not going to be a significant difference. Now, in synthetic benchmarks, you can find little differences and stuff, like, understand what I'm saying, but in real-world performance,
you're going to have to...
Yeah, so, like, video rendering, huge difference. Playing a 1 or 2 threaded game, probably not going to see a difference. So my first question is, are you overclocking? Because if you're not, push the piss out of that thing and see what happens. I had an FX 8350. If you're not playing Arma or DayZ, I think it's a great processor. I think you'd probably be very happy with it. It is a solid, beastly processor considering how much money it sells for, and Intel doesn't have anything that can compete with it in that price range unless you're playing stuff that needs high IPC, high performance per core. So the thing is, to get a real upgrade, you have to switch to Intel. And you're going to spend at least $300 to $350 to get a motherboard and CPU. They're going to be significantly faster. So my thing is overclock your 4130. If you're maxing out all of those cores, go with an 8350. To his question of, is it going to bottleneck his 960? Or, well, I guess it's not really bottlenecking the 960. Will it bottleneck a 1070 or an RX 480? Well, by the time this comes out, there will probably be a video live on my channel if you want to go check it out. I stuck a GTX 1080, Dave's to be specific.
I was going to say, 1080, huh?
I stuck it into the potato masher.
Ugh, gross.
To see what would happen with its i5 750, which overclocked is probably a little bit faster than his FX 4130 at stock speeds.
Yeah.
Pretty solid overclock I've got going on it. But the answer was, yes, it's bottlenecked, but you could still play every game and have fun. And that was the best GPU on the market. So I don't really think a 1070 and an RX 480 are directly comparable. There is no AMD card that's directly comparable to 1070, except for like a Fury X, which is like a last gen one. So for me, I think it's if you're thinking about, do I want a 1070? Get a 980 Ti. Unless you find a 1070 in stock and it's easy to get your hands on, because the 980 Ti is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper.
Yes, sir.
RX 480s are great, but if you're happy with NVIDIA and you've stuck with NVIDIA, stick with NVIDIA, no problem. Get a 970 if you want a little bump, but that's only going to be like a 20% bump from your 960. So if you want a real bump, get a 980 Ti. Don't get a 980, skip the 980. 980's garbage.
This is an amazing year to buy a graphics card. Like this summer, the power of the new cards is a bigger leap than usual, and because of that, prices are free falling so suddenly and so far. It's awesome,
dude. I bet you by the end of this year, there's going to be 980 Ti's around $300.
That is
nuts. Which will be nuts, because that is a beast card. So that would be our recommendation. See how far you can push that 4130, unless you really want to spend the money to upgrade to Intel. Unless if you don't know how much you're using it in games, install MSI Afterburner, use their performance overlay, see what your cores are doing in game. If you're maxing out like in every single game, yeah, maybe it's time to talk about it, and maybe an 8350 could be like a nice stopgap. But to get a real significant improvement, your clock speed's got to go up, or you have to go to Intel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, up next is Benjamin. Benjamin has written in with 2 questions. First one is, much appreciated regarding your input on my rig with regards to editing. He wrote in with, he had the computer that was still pretty fast. He wanted to know if it was okay for video editing. I don't know if you remember that. He had like a R9, I think 390 and 290 in Crossfire.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I believe this is the same person. He said, much appreciated regarding your input on my rig with regards to editing. I guess I just overthought what I had. However, this may be more of an issue. Recently, my laptop was upgraded to Windows 10, and to try and keep things locked to within the laptop itself, I disabled the wireless card. I'm guessing he means he didn't want extra updates being installed during the process. Once everything was said and done, it proved to not only be horrendously slow, but it wouldn't register a connection despite being connected to the same network I'm using my desktop on. Any thoughts on this? So I think he's talking about his wireless specifically is having issues. Now, he has an MSI GT70 laptop. It has a GTX 770M with 3 gigs of VRAM, 12 gigs of RAM, and an Intel i7 4700MQ. And his wireless connection sucks since moving to Windows 10. Where should he start looking?
I think the obvious place would be your manufacturer's support page for your laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that when I went to Windows 10, my motherboard is a few gens behind now, but they actually were pretty quick with not only Windows 10 drivers, because Windows is not always great about installing the correct ones, but my manufacturer, which is, it's ASUS for the motherboard too, actually. They had a hotfix that came out a few weeks later that fixed a few issues too. So there was a pretty consistent stream of new updates from the direct support page for my motherboard. So I'd say start there with your laptop's support page.
Yeah, and also run Windows Update, just do a preview and see what it recommends, because there might be a fix for that too. Windows 10 has been the best OS, I think, so far about automatically getting you the right stuff. But if you want to, if you're worried about it just not working, if there's a way you can get plugged in on a hardwired network, try uninstalling your wireless driver and then just run Windows Update and see what it grabs. Or uninstall it and then go to your manufacturer's website, find the page for your GT70, and then install that. Definitely you want to be on a driver made for Windows 10 if you're having a wireless issue. Now, to corroborate what he's saying in a little bit, my Asus Ultrabook that actually I sold to you,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the wireless did get worse when I went to Windows 10 for some reason. And I know I'm not the only one who said this, so I don't really know what's going on with that. But it appears to happen to some people. And,
Interesting.
Yeah, although when you did a clean install, it probably pulled all new stuff for it. It wasn't broken. He's saying horrendously slow and wouldn't register a connection. It wasn't broken like that, but the range cut down, it felt like.
Right.
So I didn't have as much range as I used to. And I'm wondering, could that be a Windows 10 power saving mode or something? That's another thing you might check, Ben, is go into your power settings and make sure your Wi-Fi antenna, in your advanced power settings, make sure it's not getting less power than it's supposed to be or something like that. Especially on a gaming laptop like that, it's probably not set up to automatically throttle power on anything. So you might want to check and see if Windows 10 has done some of that stuff to it.
Unwanted stuff from Windows 10.
But overall, I would say plug it into the wall, run it on maximum performance mode, disable any power saving stuff, hardwire the internet so you can delete the driver, try to reinstall the driver, start with the manufacturer website. If they don't have something specifically for Windows 10, then try Windows Update. And hopefully one of those things fixes it. It could be the type of thing where maybe MSI just doesn't support that wireless card that well on Windows 10, but that's rare because they're probably using that card in a dozen other laptops. So
Right.
And that's not that old of a laptop either. So there's probably a fix out there. Windows might have just grabbed a generic driver, the wrong driver, or you might be on a power saving mode. Those are my guesses. Anything else?
I think that about covers it.
Okay. Well, Ben has a second email.
Okay.
Hey guys, hate to spam emails. That's okay. There seems to be another issue on his main rig. So this is the one that he wrote in about before. I think it had a 3770K, a 390, and a 290, if I'm remembering right.
Got a bad luck Benjamin here.
He says, long story short, when I try to play Wolfenstein The New Order, I can never get beyond high 20s to mid 30s in frame rate at 1080p, even if I cut down the graphics. Just my 390 alone should be able to max it, no problem, which I have tried, but it really isn't happening and leaves me quite perplexed. Any thoughts? He's running Windows 7 Home Premium 64-bit on this computer.
390, 1080p.
A 390, just so you know, is like between a 970 and a 980.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a relatively modern, relatively, pretty powerful card, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Something's not right, for sure. Wolfenstein is a newer game, and cranked up, it can hit the GPU pretty hard, but he's saying that settings don't help enough to really, feel like that's the problem.
Now he says cut down the graphics. Let's start with the easy stuff. Cut them all the way down. Just to see. Because I'm not super familiar with Wolfenstein, but just to make sure there's not like GTA's ultra grass settings that can murder any card.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. I haven't heard of anything like that with Wolfenstein. Next thing is get a performance overlay like MSI Afterburner. If you're not using it, install it, learn how to run the on-screen display, monitor your GPU speed, your CPU speed on all, or your usage percentage for your CPU on all of its cores, or usage percentage of your GPU, kind of all that stuff. There's a big list you can choose from. Choose as much or as little as you want. But the stuff you should be looking for is things like, a friend of mine had a computer that kept slowing down the more he played, and then eventually it would just shut down. Turns out a SATA cable was blocking the fan on the GPU. So as it started heating up, it started downclocking to save the card, and then eventually it got too hot and it could not passively cool itself, and it just shut the computer down. So we want to eliminate anything dumb like that. So if you can keep an eye on the usage percentage and the speed of the GPU, like if it's at 100% and then the speed starts trickling down, there's like a thermal problem.
Right. That makes sense.
And if you're watching it and let's say your CPU is like at 100%, or some of your cores are like at 80, 90%, and your GPU's loafing along at 30%, check and make sure like you didn't accidentally downclock your CPU to like 1.5 gigahertz or something,
Yeah.
Like the stupid stuff. Use CPU-Z if you want to see what speeds everything's running at, or what your CPU is running at, and there are tabs for your GPU and stuff. And use MSI Afterburner if you want to get an overlay in-game. And then, the other good way to test this is you want to eliminate any variables you can. Are there any other games you're having trouble with? Like, what's your other most advanced game you can turn on right now that's going to be super demanding? Does it run fine? Like, is it just a Wolfenstein issue? So, Dave, what would you do if, let's say, GPU and CPU are both running fine? Nothing's downclocking, nothing's overheating, everything's cool like that, and other games run fine. So it's just Wolfenstein. What would you do next?
If it's a Steam copy, it should already be up to date. But just to be sure, make sure that your files are validated. If it's a Steam game, make sure if it's not a Steam game that you have the newest patch, that it's up to date. And then in your graphics options, we mentioned it already that you want to try out the lowest settings and see what kind of frame rates you get on low to see like is it actually a setting problem. Check for advanced video options as well. Things like extra hair effects, extra physics, extra ambient occlusion, maximum shadows, maximum God rays. If one setting like that is ticked the wrong direction, it could be making a slight visual difference but hitting your frame rate really hard. So check for unnecessary advanced graphics options too.
Yeah, I give Dave crap about it all the time, but like Hairworks, if you have Hairworks maxed out, like you could be playing The Witcher 3 on a 970 and getting like low 30s at 1080p.
Oh yeah.
Because you have Hairworks maxed all the way out. That's the difference between like the 30s and 60. So
yeah, I love Hairworks in The Witcher, but even I run it on low and then turn the AA up to 4 and it looks great like that. But if you turn it to high with like 8 AA on a 1080 at 1440p, I'll get FPSs in like the 40s.
Yeah, like it's just
It's a huge
you
drop.
wanna make sure nothing like that's going on.
Yeah.
And then the next step would be like uninstall the game and reinstall it. You know, if your graphics drivers are up to date, if all that other stuff's running fine, something could just be messed up in the game. You never know.
That's the have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in option?
Right.
Uninstall it, redo it.
If all the other games are fine, like this doesn't sound like a reinstall Windows type thing.
No,
You know?
no.
But hopefully it's something simple like, oh, holy crap, I was messing around with the overclock on my graphics card and I left it at 500 megahertz. You know, something like that. But right back in, and we'll just email back and forth with you if you want to troubleshoot through some of this stuff. But let's recap real quick, Dave. So start with, is your graphics driver up to date? Is your CPU running at least its stock speed?
Actually, I'd say after the driver check, do the low graphics first.
Okay, sure.
Drop them super low and see like, hey, do I get, 50, 60 FPS all of a sudden?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
And make sure your driver's up to date. Make sure everything's running at least its stock speed, so it just doesn't look super low. If you don't have MSI Afterburner, install that. Get that on-screen display going. There's plenty of tutorials online that can show you how to configure it if you want. Mm-hmm. It's not real hard to do. It's just a little confusing if you've never done it. But try that out. That'll tell you a lot of information. And look for anything that's maxing out and causing a bottleneck. Now, your GPU and your CPU, there should not be any bottlenecks. If you want to like eliminate other possible issues, you have a 390 and a 290 and you're running Crossfire. Maybe the game has like negative scaling for Crossfire.
Yeah. Oh, that's
like,
an option too. Yeah.
It happens. Like multi-GPU rigs are complicated. The first thing I would do is take out the 290 or disable the 290. Make sure you're just running on the 390 just for checking purposes. If everything's running fine, you want to add it back in, cool. But while you're figuring it out, your 390 is a pretty powerful card. Just run on that for a little bit. But yeah, it's just a one thing at a time.
Yep.
Eliminate the easy stuff first and then move your way up the list. Email us back if you want any pointers on a particular step and we'll be happy to help you. Lawrence writes in, hi there, I'm a recent follower and would first want to say I've enjoyed all the videos you've posted. Now this is my first PC and I have tried using PC Part Picker. I have an $800 hard budget but can go a little higher with a little wait time. So it's not a hard budget. Come on, man.
Oh, here we go.
No. I already have a mouse and keyboard. The only thing I knew 100% could be used. The usual games I play are Bethesda games mostly. Also, I was wondering, could I use my TV as a monitor or should I buy a PC-specific monitor? My TV has an 120 FPS refresh rate, 120 hertz, Lawrence. I'll correct your terminology just a little bit because that'll matter in a second. 120 hertz refresh rate and is 4K capable. Any tips on parts would be much appreciated, and he sent us his list. So his list, let me cue it up. His list is a 6600K, Cooler Master Hyper 212, Asus Z170 motherboard, Corsair 16 gigs of RAM, Seagate 1TB hybrid hard drive, Zotac GTX 950, Fractal R5 case, Thermaltake 750 watt 80 plus gold power supply. So I've modified that just to get you more bang for your buck. Same CPU, same cooler, the Cooler Master Hyper 212. Motherboard, I dropped down to a Gigabyte Z170, saved like $35-40. Saved a little money on the RAM. Crucial Ballistics, 16 gigs of RAM. A Western Digital Caviar Black 1TB hard drive. An Asus R9 380X 4GB video card, quite a bit faster than the 950.
Yeah, that's a huge leap.
Well, he was kind of overpaying for some stuff. He was overpaying for RAM and he was overpaying for the case. That is an awesome case. I have that case. I love that case. For this build, I would get a more medium case with your budget. So NZXT Source 220 ATX mid-tower case. It's a $50 case. Any $50 case from Cooler Master, NZXT, Corsair, a lot of the reputable brands, pretty much any of those in the $50 range is going to be at least okay. Especially for your first build, I wouldn't worry about it that much. So,
and you guys just don't understand, a decade ago, like 10 years ago, the pieces of crap that you could get for $50, the aluminum blue LED nightmares that you were stuck with for $50 just 10 years ago, it was horrible.
Well, even the most popular case in the market, the Entech 900, I had one of those, and that was a piece of garbage compared to a lot of the stuff you can get today for cheaper, and that case was like $100.
Yeah.
So things have gotten so much better. You can't really go wrong with any reputable modern $50 to $70 case. So
check the reviews.
I'm just
go
saying,
for a good brand, and you will be set.
If you don't know, like, what's a good brand, Corsair, Cooler Master, pick one, you're done.
Yeah.
They don't really make any bad cases, just a lot of ugly ones. Like look like ammo cases and stuff. Like, it's horrible.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Now to answer his question, his TV has an 120 hertz refresh rate and is 4K capable. So, Dave, are you familiar with this whole TV refresh rate deal?
120 FPS refresh rate on a 4K TV in 2016 sounds like it's interpolating frames or something.
I think all of them are. I don't think, I could be wrong about this. I don't think there are many, if any, TVs that are accepting like a native 240 hertz, or, you know, some of them are even higher, 120, 240. I think most of them, at least any budget models, any models that are under a couple grand,
Yeah.
are all 60 hertz, and they interpolate the frames, 60 frames, and they interpolate to 120 hertz, and they can smooth in between to make like sports and stuff look better, because sports is not being shot at 120 FPS. Like, you're not getting an 120 FPS signal.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times, I don't know about sports specifically, but a lot of the times you're getting a 24 or 30 FPS signal. So to answer his question though, at 60 FPS, yes, totally you can use your TV. With 4K and 60 FPS, you're probably going to need DisplayPort. Like, I don't know what HDMI standard your TV is going to be using, but there could be some HDCP issues possibly. But in general, you should be able to play at least 1080p with your TV. 4K, 120 FPS, I don't know. I'd have to know your TV model. If you want to write back with that, I can look into it for you. But 1080p and 60 hertz, you should be able to do no problem with a basic HDMI connection. This card supports it. Shouldn't be a problem. Anything else to add on that, Dave?
No, sounds good to me.
I mean, it's kind of all shouldn't be a problem. This should be fine. As usual.
Disclaimer, if it all explodes, we're not
now, his hard limit
responsible.
is $804. $805 is whatever written in, although it comes with $65 of rebates, and it could end up being $750. If you want to save some money and wait a little while longer, get everything I just listed, but also get a small SSD to put your boot drive on. Like, to make your boot drive, it'll be a lot better later. All right. Next email is from Daniel. He says, "Hi CSG, I'm Daniel. I've been seeing the podcast for a pretty long time and I like it. I usually watch it in the CS YouTube channel because I like to see it when I'm eating. A bad idea if you don't like to know anything about waffle stopping. Or when I don't want to play video games. It's fun to listen to you guys, and also thanks to the podcast, I've learned so many things from the PC Master Universe and from the consoles. However, I would like to ask for your help with some questions. Here are his specs. AMD FX 8320, overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz, a gigabyte 970 motherboard, 8 gigs of RAM, Radeon Sapphire R9 270X, an Aero Cool 600 watt, 80 plus bronze power supply. I've honestly never heard of that. Hyper 212 Evo, 1 terabyte Hitachi hard drive, Windows 10, G502 mouse, a G430 headset. So first thing he wants help with. I'm thinking of buying a Kingston 240 gig SSD. It's the V300. Is it a good choice? If not, could you recommend something better? And can I install Windows on it and somehow use every program from the other hard drive without erasing it, except Windows? So I looked up the first thing. Is it a good SSD? Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. The Samsung 840 or 850 Evos and Pros are awesome. They're probably some of the best there are. But there are plenty of good ones, and that Kingston is very highly rated by plenty of people. So yeah,
Nice.
you're probably fine. Dave, can he install Windows on that and reuse his existing hard drive and use the programs off that hard drive without erasing it?
There will be forums. Other people will answer this question online. These people will tell you that, yes, you can reconnect and rebuild your installation. Those people are all wrong.
Those people are all sadists,
Yeah.
and want to desperately cling to it. Like, if you have dial-up
Yeah.
internet, maybe that's a thing, but...
Okay, so it may be at the end of who knows how many hours of fighting it, it may be technically possible to rebuild your Windows installation. I think it's very unlikely, and it is by far not worth the headache and the frustration. Don't do it.
Because those programs are not just installed in their folders. Because you are installing Windows, a new installation of Windows, so that's good.
Yes.
But there are a lot of files those programs might have other places that they're going to need to run. So it's just not really worth it. Like, it really isn't. If you're curious about using stuff, like if you don't need to do a reinstall of Windows for some other reason, there are programs like EaseUS, Total Partition Backup. I'm mangling the name. I will send you a link to it in the email we're going to write you. You can clone your hard drive to this SSD as long as you have less than 240 gigabytes of stuff on it of OS and programs. You can tell it to exclude like your My Documents folder and stuff if you want to save room. But if you have less than 240 gigs of stuff on it, you can absolutely clone it to this SSD and you'll be fine. Or you can wipe it out. You can install Windows on the SSD. You can install programs on that hard drive. Almost all of my games are installed on a second hard drive, but you have to install them on that hard drive after you install Windows.
Yes.
Your current Windows installation needs to manage that install to make sure everything works. But other than that, it'll be fine. And there are some exceptions, like, so I'm about to install Windows 10. I'm not going to wipe out my games drive. I'm going to reinstall Windows. I'm going to point Steam towards it, and then Steam's going to see those games, and then I'll just verify the files, and it'll check it all. It'll re-download a couple little things, and I'll be fine. That works great for Steam. Most programs do not have any sort of way to do that. So you got to reinstall. Sorry.
And make sure you back up not only your personal files, but your game save games, your profile settings. There's some great free programs out there that will let you do that. Think about how many hours you put into some of your favorite games. You know, you want to back that stuff up just like your photos and stuff like that.
Is there, what's the name of that? Can you link me to that thing you use to back up your save games?
I really should find the name of that, shouldn't I?
You really should.
Let's see if I can find it. Give me a few minutes here. Carry
and
on.
I'm going to send you a
me.
link to, I'm going to send you a link, Daniel, to EaseUS to do backup free, or Toto backup free. Very long, dumb name. But you can use that to clone a Windows installation if you need to. But keep in mind, it's got to be smaller than the drive you're cloning it to. I'll move on to his next question because this is a kind of an AMD specific thing. I did an overclock to my CPU to 4.2 gigahertz. With guides from the internet, it's my first overclock. I didn't want to go too crazy with it, and it went well, I think. I'm not really secure about it, so I want to know. When I turn on the PC, it gets on for a second, then it shuts down for 3 to 5 seconds, then it starts like always. I've read some people saying that's normal after an overclock, so is that normal or safe, or am I killing my CPU slowly? Did I overclock it bad? If yes, what should I change or investigate? It gets up to 55 to 57 degrees Celsius at max, thanks to the Hyper 212. So, no, so I had an 8350, and I had the exact same thing on, I believe, also a Gigabyte 970 board. So first things, 55 to 57 degrees Celsius at load is awesome. You did a great job. That is a very safe temperature. I have not had an overclocked CPU that low in a very long time.
Nice.
I don't even start thinking about, should I turn this down until I'm like mid 70s. So, you're totally good on temperature. If something else was wrong with it, like if it was an unstable backup, you would not be using your computer normally. So there are a couple theories about what's happening. This is really an AMD specific thing. Some people will claim to say like, okay, if you disable the turbo boost, if you disable a couple of these other special features, then it won't do that, which might be the case. But the common consensus seems to be it starts, it boots, and then when it goes to post, it sees that you have an overclock running in your BIOS, so it shuts down, boots back up with the overclock, and proceeds from there. And that just happens really quickly. My computer did this exact same thing. It did it for years. It was totally fine. About a year and a half. Plenty of other people online have all been doing it. Not a problem. If you're monitoring your temperatures and your temperatures are okay and you didn't do something like jack the voltage up to, way above stock or something like that, and it doesn't sound like you did, you have nothing to worry about. You only have something to worry about if it doesn't work like it did before. If it just wants to shut down and then start right back up when you do a boot, not a problem. I had it happen. Tons of people have had it happen. Dave, do you have a name of that program?
I do.
Okay. What is it? And then link me and I'll paste it in the email.
It's about as generic as it could possibly be. Game Save Manager. But what's cool about this program is it's not just a way to back up your game saves. It backs up your like graphics settings profile. It pulls save games from all those weird locations like C, users, your username, user data, temp, floating, like all those weird places that save games go. This has a profile for each game, and it can find all that, and it just creates this like nice, complete, big zip file basically. And when you unpack it, it takes like 10, 15 minutes, and it puts all the files back where they belong. It's amazing.
And then he has one more question.
Oh,
And I've linked that in the email you're going to get. By the time you're listening to this, you're already looking at the email. But I'm a student. I don't have too much money, but I can save for a few months to buy an upgrade for the PC. I would like to upgrade it so it can run, quotes, every game at 60 FPS, 1080p ultra settings. I actually can run right now GTA 5, Fallout 4, Battlefield 4 at max settings, but at 45 to 55 FPS, Fallout 4 goes from 60 to 25 in some areas. Yeah, it's a Bethesda game. What should I keep an eye on to make this happen in the future? So what should he upgrade on his rig to hit that ultra thing? Now, he's only using an R9 270X. So that. Upgrade that.
yep, that's it. That's the GPU.
Your CPU's not the fastest, but it should be fine for a while, especially overclocked. And an RX 480, if you want to save up the money for that, or wait for a 970 to drop in price a little bit. There are a bunch of options, but yeah, a 270X, so you need to go at least up to a 380X, and I would say you want something around the speed of a 390 or a 390X to really make it worth it. So a 290 would also be fine, 290X. So that means you need something that's going to be at least like $200. Because you don't want to do like a 15% bump. If you're going to upgrade it, it should be like a 30 to 40% bump at least, just so you're getting your money's worth.
Nice.
And that's it. Thanks for all that, guys. You do an awesome job entertaining people while you have fun. Keep at it. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and then here's our last email for the evening, and this is not a build question. This is just kind of our educational portion of the evening. Grant wrote in and said, I am planning on a new build. I've written in before, and since the build you guys have given me, I've made a couple changes to my own liking, but that's not the question here. I did not include the operating system, Windows 10, in the build because you said there are ways to get it free, legally, of course. Can you explain how to do that in greater detail? I'm just assuming it's on some website. I'm not a college student, but in high school and have a student ID, although my sister is. She's currently going to a temporary community college. Temporary community college? Like, is that like a tent in a field? That sounds like a scam. Your sister might want to look into that.
It's in a truck. The engine's running.
Will this do? Any and all help will be appreciated. If you could always also send links, that'd be great. Thank you so much. I've also watched episode 150 live. Great episode, especially the Mad Libs part. If I could get a request to put that video on the Casual Shenanigans YouTube channel as a separate video, that would be great. It already is up there. We put it up at the same time. Go check it out. Thanks for your time and stay casual. So, Dave, we've hinted at this before.
Yeah.
And this is a slightly complicated topic. But what do you do if you don't want to drop $100 on a Windows license and you don't want to pirate it? Just right immediately, we're taking that off the table.
Yes.
That is no part of this. And that also does not include buying a gray market key off G2A. Nothing we're about to talk about has anything to do with any of that.
What about a gray market key off of Reddit?
Yeah. So, Dave, what would you? Let's start with the student thing because that's usually how we mention.
Okay,
it.
so a lot of
go ahead.
A lot of universities, high schools, community colleges have a deal with Microsoft where you can get a key for possibly free. Like you need to go to your administration, go to your IT department, ask them what do they have. In my case, where I went to school, I couldn't get it for free, but I could get it for it was like $36. Like it was super cheap compared to the full retail version.
Yeah. And most of the time they're partnered with Digital River, which I don't know if they're a subsidiary of Microsoft or they work with them very closely. But that's most of the schools where I've seen it happen. It's Digital River, and you can get a free or, like Dave said, discounted copy of the OS. Totally free might be a little rare, but I did get a completely free copy of Windows 8.1. I'm just sitting on an extra key.
It happens.
It does happen, but now this is where it can kind of get into slightly gray market territory. Because, like, can you see if your sister can check and see if she can get it from her community college? If she doesn't need it, can you use it? You can do that. Microsoft's terms of service, usually for those educational keys, are that you're only supposed to use it while you're a student and you're supposed to be the only person using it. So keep that in mind. It's kind of one of those like letter of the law versus the spirit of the law things. Nobody's going to come beat down your door and prevent you from doing that. And like, you definitely shouldn't be selling that key, but like you could use your sister's key. Like, I mean, that's certainly I think from an ethical standpoint, not the end of the world by any means, but it is technically against Microsoft's specific terms of service for that key. So if possible, avoid doing it that way. Get your own key. Because if you're in school, you should be able to get it from somewhere. Same thing with like, if you have an old computer lying around that has like a Windows 7 license on it or something, there's a chance you can transfer it. That's not always the case. Like, depending on what type of OEM build it is or where it came from, it may not be transferable. But sometimes they are. So that's another way to check into it. So none of this is like, you can definitely get a cheap or free Windows key.
Right.
But if you're young and you're a student, there are numerous possible ways you can get a cheap Windows key so that are worth looking into.
The base advice is basically don't make going to Best Buy and buying a retail copy of Windows off the shelf for $180 your first option. That should never be your first option.
Yeah, check with your school. If you're going to college soon, check with that college. If you have a .edu email address of any type, you should have a couple different places you can check. We can't link you a specific place because usually it's a link through the IT department of your particular school because it's a partnership with the school. So we cannot link you to it, but you should be able to contact the IT department and ask them.
Yeah, in my case, I couldn't get anywhere near that like storefront, the digital storefront to see the keys without being logged in with my school account. Like, it just does not let you near that.
Yeah. And there's also, so depending on, now he's in school, so this won't apply to him, but depending on what you do for work, like I do a lot of work for a bunch of nonprofits. I manage their IT, I do graphic design, et cetera, et cetera. And there's something called TechSoup. And TechSoup, they partner with a bunch of operating system. Well, there's not a bunch of operating system people. They partner with Microsoft and then a bunch of other software developers and publishers to offer cheap or free licenses for nonprofits that fit certain categories. And so like we can get unlimited Windows keys for $12 a pop. And I think like 6 or 7 years ago, we bought 100 keys because one of the things I did as part of my job was take donated computers, wipe them, put a clean Windows 7 install on it, and send it down to Central America to be used in orphanages and jails, set up computer centers. And the terms of service for using these are, you can't sell these keys, obviously. Some people do. That's where some of these gray market keys come from. They'll just peel a couple off and sell them.
Right.
That is definitely against the terms of service. But in the terms of service, since I do work for the organization, if I use a computer to primarily do work for that organization, I can use one of those keys. Now, if I have I just game on this computer at home, like if that's how I used my computer, I could not use one of their keys. Like that's 100% against the terms of service.
Yeah.
But like if I had a computer, and I have my own key for Windows, but if I had like a computer that was mostly used to work for them, like I was their employee and it was like my traveling laptop or something that I worked for them on, I could use one of those Windows licenses because I am working for them. It is benefiting the nonprofit primarily. So there are a couple like slightly gray areas like that are, but those are like specific use cases. And if you're eligible for one of those, you probably already know about it. So Grant, that probably does not apply to you, but I'm just letting people know that's some of the other stuff that's out there. Like if you work for a nonprofit, you should be checking to see what type of discounts you can get because there are crazy discounts on a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Especially software. So, I mean, another organization I work for has the entire Google Apps for Nonprofits thing. It's 25 gigs of storage for each user, the Google professional email services, domain name services, all of that 100% free. So
yeah, you can get some pretty sweet deals. I remember that my last year of school, I went in and I took like, out of the money I got back from my student loans, I took like maybe $200 and got the Adobe Master Suite. And this is before, Adobe Creative Cloud and all that. So I had like all 20 some Adobe programs, the professional, like full versions. And they came with a license, even being the student versions, they had a license to use them for commercial work. And I used that Master Suite for like 4 years. It was fantastic. That was a wild discount. I'm glad I looked for that before I graduated.
Yeah, so if you're in a situation where none of these apply to you, then yes, you may end up having to shell out like $100 for Windows. There are legitimate keys that do get sold on like I forget the name, Microsoft Swap or whatever. I'm not going to say the exact name. If you want it, you can go find it. There are legit keys that get sold on there, but there's no way I could tell you over this podcast a way to vet what keys are legit and what aren't. Because there's a ton of gray market keys in there that might work, and I don't want to recommend you do that as a first option or a fourth option or a 10th option even, just because unless you really know what you're doing, that's going to be a lot dicier. But I mean, there are legit keys that get sold on there, so they're not automatically bad. Like G2A, I would assume is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Just assume those are all illegitimate keys.
Good assumption off the bat.
So just to summarize for everybody who's heard us talk about this before and isn't sure, this will primarily benefit you if you are a student, especially if you're a student in college, which are a lot of our listeners are of that demographic. So that's why we talk about it a lot. But your best, most legal, superior option is to get it for free or cheap through your school.
Right.
That is the most foolproof solution. In a couple of years, it may not matter because Microsoft might just give it away. Who knows? But for right now, that's your best option. Followed by, if you have another license from an old computer that you can legally transfer over, that's a great option. I mean, and if it's depending on the type of license, like you might be able to go to a thrift store and pick one up. Windows 7 computers have been out for a while. So
yeah,
if you want to get a Windows 7 computer and upgrade it to Windows 10 and use that license, you probably can, unless it's an OEM key that can't be transferred. But yeah, there's a variety of things you can do like that. I mean, there's even stuff like you might be able to find a sealed copy of Windows 7 in some store that you can buy and use the key for, that like in a thrift store or something that's been donated. You never quite know. It's worth a shot.
And like most deals, if you just spend a little bit of research and time, you can usually end up saving a good bit of money.
All I will say is I've never had to spend full price for a Windows license, and I've never broken the law doing it. So, and I've been out of school for a while. I've just gotten better at maintaining. I mean, actually, I've just been doing upgrades for a while, so it hasn't really been an issue. Because this Windows 10 upgrade, this would have been the first one I would have had to spend money for, so I probably wouldn't have. I wouldn't have done it, but it's going to be free, so I'm going to. But yeah, you'll get better at this. You'll learn more about it. Eventually, one day, I'm sure I will spend full price on Windows license, and I won't mind doing it. I mean, I spend $50 a month on the Creative Cloud, so
what a dark day that will be for buying a copy of Windows.
Yeah. So, whatever. But there are good, legitimate ways to do it. But this is definitely not something that everybody can do legally. So, we by no means guarantee that you can. But if you're a student, especially, there's a very good chance you can get a discounted or free copy. And you should look into it and do a little research. But
always,
thank you guys for coming out and listening. Thank you for being a part of the podcast. As always, write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com to be part of the show. If we didn't get to your question in this episode, we'll get to it in the next episode, which we'll record as soon as we are conveniently able. And anything else for us, Dave?
I think that's it.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. If you have any comments about this episode, throw them in the comments. We'll talk to you all later. Stay casual.